I had no memory of ever being human. I had no thoughts. I was just there. And there was this huge roar, this huge sound. It was overwhelming. And I felt that I was full of light, but I felt that I was also full of the emptiness that contained the light. So I felt full and empty at the same time. I also felt that I was alone, or that I was everything. The beginning was the one, but the one was alone and he wanted to play. So he divided himself into two and gave number two amnesia, and thus the game began.
Oh my God.
When I heard that, I realized that I was number two, you are number two, we are all number two, we are all God who divided himself into two, gave himself amnesia. You cannot say in words what it represents. And basically, you cannot speak about those things. The same thing happens with near-death experience. These are ineffable events. Ineffable means that they are beyond words. They are beyond description. I walked up to the nearest wall and I placed my hand on the wall, and I could feel that I was my hand pressing the wall, but I could also feel that I was the wall pressing back. And that really, it scared me a little because, I was in two places at the same time. I was me, but I was also the wall. So this was very impressive. So I realized that my body or myself did not end where the body ends, that it's larger. We are larger than what we think, okay?
Welcome back, everybody, to the Kotodama podcast. The guest I have with me today is AJ Parr. He is an amazing journalist, a researcher. He's an author of more than 20 spiritual books. He focuses on research and journalism, especially in the topic of the near-death experience. He has done this for so many years. He is also a facilitator. He is a podcaster. And as I just mentioned, he explores basically one of the most profound experiences that a human can have in their life, which is a near-death experience. And I am so excited for this episode because it's basically the first episode for me that goes into this highly spiritual topic. And I think it's so important to talk about these things. And so this basically means a lot to me that AJ is here with us. So welcome to the show, AJ.
Thank you, Janam. How are you? I'm doing
Thank
great
you. I'm
here.
doing great.
Yeah, me too. Well, I'm really excited. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. And we had an amazing conversation yesterday. I am so excited to ask you all of these questions that I have written down here.
Yes.
So, guys, me and AJ, we met in a meeting basically that I joined for the International Association for Near-Death Studies. It's called, in short, IANS. And they are the biggest association, is that correct, AJ, in the world?
Yes. It's the first and the largest worldwide dedicated to the study of near-death experiences.
Amazing.
It also offers sharing groups, sharing circles, in which people who have had these experiences are able to share them privately. And they also have a yearly conference, and they offer webinars. It's very active in the field.
Amazing. Yeah, because when I found them, I was like, finally, I can contact people who had near death experiences because that's something I'm so fascinated by. And yesterday, you told me a little bit about your experience. So, for everyone who doesn't know about you, you had an experience, may I say, 34 years ago when you were
Yes,
34.
right.
Isn't that
That's true.
synchronistic? Yes. And you had a profound spiritual, I want to say, you had a near death experience. Is that right? Can you
Yes.
walk us through what happened to you?
Well, basically, when I was a child, I suffered from asthma, and I had some nights when I was a kid, I basically stopped breathing and fainted. And one night, when I was 34, I I think I stopped breathing because I was later diagnosed with sleep apnea. And the fact is that one night uh, I woke up gasping for air. It was like when you're in the swimming pool, you're drowning, or you're in the water and you come out and you have to gasp for air. I had that sensation that I had been deprived from breathing. And as soon as I took a deep breath, I held my head because I remembered an experience that had just taken place. And I was really blown away because this is uh, what I think happened is that I woke up in the middle of the night. It was completely dark. I could not see anything. So I raised my hands to see if I could see them. It was totally dark. And I was afraid that in that darkness, I felt a presence. I was afraid that there could be something or someone hidden there. And I was right. I heard a voice that said, "Surrender, all is one." In that moment, I felt my chest expand, and it expanded more and more. And all of a sudden, it grew so large that it was like, I don't know if it was an explosion or something, but I found myself in the middle of a bright star. There was light coming from in all directions. I could see up, down, to the right, to left, in all directions. I could see in all directions. But in the middle, in the center, there was no human body. It was pure light. It was also like this an empty feeling, like when you sigh or when you take a deep breath. It was like an empty feeling. So I could see each ray expanding infinitely in all directions. And I could also see each ray individually. And I noticed that each ray was surrounded by a little space of emptiness. So between one ray and the other ray, there was a little bit of empty space. And I could see all the rays at the same time. And I could see this was in that realm, there is no time. So I think I saw everything simultaneously. However, I have to say it in chronological order. For example, if I focus my attention to the center of that star, it was pure light. And if I focused on each ray, I would see it would expand infinitely, because when I reached the end, there was more and more and more. And it had no end. And when I saw uh, when I saw, or when I felt myself there, I had no memory of ever being human. I had no thoughts. I didn't say, "Hey, I'm here." No, I didn't. I was just there, and there was this huge roar, this huge sound. It was overwhelming. And I felt that I was full of light, but I felt that I was also full of the emptiness that contained the light. So I felt full and empty at the same time. I also felt that I was alone, or that I was everything. And being everything was part of that experience that I called it a oneness experience. So at first, uh, I when I was there, I don't know how long it took, but that's when all of a sudden I woke up and I gasped for air. So I felt like I had been drowning and I had been deprived from breathing. So I took this long breath and held my head and said, "Wow, what just happened?" And the the memory was so fresh, and it still is. I can still perceive that, but it was like from another dimension, because how can you explain, or how can you even imagine being able to see in all directions at the same time? So it's like another dimension, okay? So I got up from my bed And I said I was still feeling that I was one with everything, and that from my chest, which was the comparison with the center of that star, I could feel that from the center of my chest, I still emanated rays of light in all directions, and that I was everything. So I walked up to the nearest wall, and I placed my hand on the wall, and I could feel that I was my hand pressing the wall, but I could also feel that I was the wall pressing back. And that really, it scared me a little because, I was in two places at the same time. I was me, but I was also the wall. So this was very impressive. So
Wow.
I realized that my body or myself did not end where the body ends, that it's larger. We are larger than what we think. Okay. We
Yes.
are everything. So I was confused for a couple of days, and I was asking the universe, God, what happened? Please give me an explanation. And 2 nights later, I received a download. I felt the presence of a very old man, so old it made me cry. My tears started dropping because I recognize him as a very, very ancient soul. And he told me, but it was not that I did not hear his words. I just received the information instantly in my mind. And he told me, or he gave me an explanation of what had just happened. And it also explained to me many things. So it was like a brief, small poem. It went like this. In the beginning was the One, but the One was alone and he wanted to play. So he divided himself into two and gave number two amnesia, and thus the game began.
Oh my God.
When I heard that, I realized that I was number two, you are number two, we are all number two, we are all God who divided himself into two, gave himself amnesia. It's also the creation story, the origin of the universe, the origin of this dual world. And it's also who we really are. And as I later researched, it is also the basis of all ancient religions. There is a spiritual world, there is a real world, a non dual world, and there is also an illusory world, a world of illusion, which is this world of duality. And people say that we're living in a matrix. Well, we're living in an illusion. It's a world that is not as real as the One. So basically, the One represents what people call God, Jehovah, Brahman, or there are Allah. There are many words for God, and in the ancient Chinese, they call it the Tao, and they also call him the One. So when people in the Tao Te Ching, which is one of the most ancient Chinese writings, they say the Tao that you speak about is not the eternal Tao. You cannot say in words what it represents. And basically, you
Wow.
cannot speak about those things. The same thing happens with near death experience. These are ineffable events. Ineffable means that they are beyond words, they are beyond description. So after that, I spent 30 years. First, I shared my experience. I didn't know what to call it. I called it a oneness experience. I knew it was a mystical experience, but I had never heard about near-death experiences. This was back in 1991. There was no internet. I did have spiritual books. I had the Bible, the Tao Te Ching. And one thing is that when I came back, I could read, for example, the Bible, and I could find parts of the Bible that talked about this. And I also had the Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching, and I started noticing that they talk about this. They talk about the light, they talk about oneness, they talk about uh, recognizing the illusory nature of this world. Jesus talked about he said, do not gather treasures in this world, gather them in the spiritual realm, right? So
Yes.
everything started making sense. So I spent the next 30 years, without mentioning my story, I wrote 20 spiritual books analyzing the common roots of all religions, because I realized that there is a common root. And this common root is not based on priests or pastors or, churches. It is based on a direct connection of your spirit with source, or with God, spirit, whatever you want to call it, with the supreme being, which is us. Okay.
Yes.
And I understood that basically all these religions, these ancient religions, uh, were born uh, not as a teaching or as a church, they were born as a spiritual practice. For example, Jesus did not write anything, he used parables. The same with Buddha, okay? And Krishna, the same. He did not write. They wrote about them, but they did not write a teaching or a dogma. So it was all a matter of recognizing the illusory nature of this world. So after 30 years, around 4 years ago, I met, I have a publishing company. I help people publish books because I started publishing my own books in Amazon. So I started publishing books for people, and I still do. That's how I make a living. And this woman from Spain, a journalist, I'm a journalist as well. She came to me because she wanted her book. She wanted me to translate her book from Spanish to English. Okay, so I did, but she had had a near-death experience. Her book was called 24 Minutes on the Other Side. So it seemed very interesting. I had never um, read about near-death experiences. Don't know why, but when I read about her experience, I told her my own, and I said, look, you talk about being in this dark place. I was there too, I tell her. And she said, well, yes, that's what we call the void. And I said, wow. And she also mentioned being in the light and merging with the light. And I said, look, I also merged with the light. And I told her my experience. And she said, well, that is very common among near-death experiencers. They merge with the light and they have this oneness experience. And I told her, look, but I could also see up and down, to the right, to the left, in all directions at the same time. And she said, well, yes, that's what we call 360-degree vision. So she said, look, I think you had a near-death experience. But I wasn't sure, because since I thought back then that to have a near-death experience, you have to die. You see, that was something I later found out to be a mistake. So I said, well, but I did not die. You did, because she did die. She flatlined during surgery. So I said, okay, I did not flatline, so this must have not been a near-death experience. So I said, well, okay. So I started calling it a near-death-like experience, or I did not. I didn't really know what it was. But then I decided, after talking to her, since she was a journalist, I told her, "Look," she told me about people who were interviewing near-death experiencers. I have never been interested in those podcasts. But she told me about them, and I said, okay, I'm going to start my own podcast. I'm not going to, rather than listening to other people's interviews, I'm going to start interviewing people because I'm a journalist. I want to do this research. So I started interviewing people, and probably the first or second month after I started interviewing people, I interviewed Dr. Yvonne Kaysen. She coined the term spiritually transformative experiences. She, in the 80s, she started studying near-death experiences. She was also a former president of IANS, of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And after I finished the interview, her story was really interesting because she was aboard a plane, and when the plane was falling, she heard a voice, and the plane crashed. She survived, and then it fell on a frozen lake, and as she was swimming, she left her body, and she also experienced the light, but she did not die. So, however, when in the end of the interview, she asked me, have you ever had a spiritually transformative experience? I had never heard that term. I thought she was asking me, have you ever had a spiritual experience? That's what I understood. And I said, yeah, but I don't like to talk about it because during those 30 years, I told my parents, I told my relatives, I told my uh, I told everyone I knew basically about that, and they always turned away. They always said, "No, that was a dream. No, don't talk about those things. No, you must have imagined it." So I really got tired, and I simply shoved it to the back of my mind, and I never wrote about it. I never talked about it. And when she told me, "Look, we're going to have this meeting, a sharing circle," she called it, where we're going to exchange experiences, and I want to invite you so you can share your experience. So I said, okay. So I told them, I went to this meeting. I told them about all my experiences, which included uh, dreaming with angels when I was a kid, learning how to lucid dream, astral travel, meeting spiritual guides, uh, both with my eyes open, awake, and in dreams, and many experiences. And I told them about this experience. And it was the first time I shared it. And she told me that she invited me to join her association, which is called the Spiritual Awakenings International. It's this association. I became part of it for 2 years, and then after that, I joined IANS, and now I've been for 2 years. I've been with IANS, and I after that I started interviewing. I've interviewed so far over 100 near-death experiencers
Wow.
and around a dozen near-death researchers, including Raymond Moody, Pim Van Lommel, Evan Alexander, Melvin Morse, PMH Atwater. There are many very important researchers who have been studying this for around 50 years. So these are these are pioneers who made me understand that to have a near death experience, you do not have to die. First of all, it's called near death, but you don't necessarily have to die. I interviewed people who were drowning, and they did not die, but they had a near death experience. They either saw light or they left their body, and they had what is known as a near death experience. So you do not necessarily have to clinically die. Dr. Evan Alexander, who is one of the most important researchers, he had a near death experience, but he was like around 10 days in coma. He never died. And the same with a lot of people I've interviewed. So in the end, I concluded that I did have, according to the people I spoken and some researchers, I did have a near death experience. There's also a test called the Grayson scale. I took that, and uh, the results show that I did have uh, a near death experience. I had a punctuation of 20 out of over 30, and also I've been working with Nancy Evans Bush. And she also had a near death experience, very famous in the 60s. She is 91 years old, and she was the first manager, executive manager of IANS, and they conducted many studies, and she was the one that told me, look, you should you should start saying that it was a near death experience. Also, I've interviewed many people who have had near death experiences, and they come back with powers. This is very strange and very interesting.
Wow.
Some of them, when they come back, they start seeing dead people. Others have telepathy. Others can predict what's going to happen. Others see
Yes.
people and know if they're going to die. They say, look, I can tell, or especially right after the experience. I know this. I interviewed this woman who, when she left the hospital, uh, she was in London, and I think she was going for a checkup. She died in surgery, and when after she came back, she was going for a checkup, and they were waiting in a corner, for the lights to turn and to cross the street. And this woman was crossing the street, but a car hit her and killed her. And she saw her spirit leave the body, and she was saying, "Hey, go to the light, go to the light, don't worry, everything's fine, go to the light." And her husband was saying, "What?" Everybody, no one understood what she was saying, but she was actually saw spirit leave. And she said that got her into trouble. A lot of people are spend many years before they start sharing their experiences. Some of them were diagnosed as schizophrenic and even sent to the psychiatry ward. They
I
were
mean,
declared.
AJ, yes, it's so
Yes.
sad. And just to say, listening to you, by the way, I have this goosebumps, when you talk about your experience. It really moves me somehow. I can feel how it's still very, very fresh in your memory, even though it's so many years ago. And what I wanted to say is it's a profound experience. And I think that it must have been you must have felt so lonely having people around you basically gaslighting you just because there wasn't enough
Yes.
information out there at the time. I mean, now, if you just Google NDE or you just, even on YouTube, you can put an NDE and there's so many interviews and so many people now. But back in the day, I mean, before I was born, right, you had this experience. I cannot imagine how lonely
Yeah.
that
This
must
was.
have been.
I. I felt very lonely, and I used to say, "This is a blessing and a curse because I will never be normal again." So I was struggling to make sense out of it, and I became a loner. I would think I had always been a loner, a hermit, or an isolated person, but I became even more. like a loner. So I s- I stopped talking to people about these things, and I found normal conversations very boring. You know, people were worried about things that that was not my main concern.
You
So
were like,
I was like, what?
you were like, basically, dude, I literally met God yesterday. Can you tell me something more interesting than like your taxes or something? No, but honestly, when you say some people come back with these powers, you came back with powers. I mean, when you talk about the 360-degree vision, this is not the first time I'm hearing this. I mean, I cannot imagine, right? I have not had that experience. But when you say, like, when you came out of it and then you still felt it, you still felt the light, you still felt the vision. And when you touched the wall and you felt also
Right.
that you were the wall touching you, right? That is a supernatural, right? Experience. And that is I'm sure some people have that maybe for longer time, but I mean, at the end of the day, that is an absolutely profound experience. And I think you had so many more. But for everyone who's listening who doesn't know the common themes, right? You've interviewed so many people, you've written books about people who had NDEs, you yourself had one. So, what are like the most common themes across cultures and languages, right? Like in religions? What are common themes that people experience in a near
Well,
death experience?
in 1975, a young doctor called Raymond Moody, he had collected a series of cases. He had over 150 cases that he had been studying because in when he was a student, he read a book by Plato called The Republic. And in the last chapter of The Republic by Plato, this was written like 2,500 years ago. Okay. So in this book, they talk about a Greek warrior who died in battle and then came back to life. And when he came back to life, he told them what is known as the first recorded near death experience. So he was really interested in that because he read about that when he was in the university, and then he met uh, started meeting people who had had near death experiences. So he started collecting them, and he gained interest in that topic. And the more he talked about it, the more people he met. And after a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years, he had 150 interviews, but verbally, or reports.
Yeah.
And he gave a lecture, and someone noticed that, heard about him, and he got a book deal, a book offer. Look, if you write a book about near death experiences, I will pay you. And he wrote it. He said it. He wrote it in a month, and in that book, he coined the term near death experience. It was the first time it was used. And he also talked about the common elements. He determined that no two near death experiences are identical and that there are common elements. So, all near death experiences are different. Somehow, our unconscious, like we are co creators of this reality, right?
Yes.
We are, according to quantum physics, uh, if there is no observer, there is no material world. So this reality depends on the observer. The same with the spiritual world. The
Yes.
spiritual world is somehow co created by the observer.
Yes.
Why? Because if you, let's imagine 5,000 years ago, if you lived in Egypt and you had a near death experience, you will probably see Egyptian gods. And if you see a being of light, you would probably say, oh, it's Osiris or the god Ra, you know? So
Yeah.
we all co create our perception of the spiritual world. and we also co-create this reality.
Yes.
So he, nevertheless, he identified 15 common elements. I'm going to mention the most important ones. One of the first common elements is meeting the light. He said that that is the most common element in all NDEs, meeting the light, and also having this oneness experience. And many times this light talks to you and people have a conversation with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is very important. Another common element is that people, mostly in surgery, but in other cases as well, people leave their body and they see their body from above. They can be having surgery. They leave their body and they can see the doctors working. And interestingly enough, there are some cases in which, known as verified near-death experiences, in which people, for example, in the waiting room, I saw my grandmother on her knees praying. And then when they come back, they talk to their family and they said, yes, your grandmother was on her knees praying. And things like that.
Yeah.
When I had my near-death experience, uh, I saw my daughter at her aunt's house, and yes, she was there. So there are many
Wow.
testimonies that were proven later. Okay, that's regarding the out-of-body experiences. Most also see a tunnel, but it's also interpreted as a dark space that you have to cross in order to get to the light. Okay, so
Wow.
many people see it as a tunnel, and they see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And this tunnel can be dark or it can have colors. I have heard many descriptions, and many simply call it the void or a dark place, and after that they end up going somewhere else. Another characteristic is that they see deceased people. They could be deceased loved ones, deceased friends, or deceased people they don't even know. And in some cases they say, look, I did not know that person, but it was family. I felt it like I knew that person from all my life, So
Yeah.
it was really strange. So they talk about soul families, and some people see Jesus Christ, Buddha, Krishna. They see divinities. They see
Wow.
angels. They even see, some of them see a city, a celestial city, with buildings, with people. A lot of them go to what they call a meadow or a beautiful garden. In that garden, they may or may not see angels. Another characteristic that is really important is the life review. He also discovered that the longer you are dead or close to death, the deeper the experience. You see? So I met people who have been, for example, this friend of mine, Tessa Romero, she was clinically dead for 24 minutes before being brought back. And I've known people who have been clinically dead for longer, for an hour. They come back without any sequels. So this is really amazing. And this regarding the life review, it's not what some people say. No, I saw my whole life flashing by. No, it's not that.
How can you describe like what a life review is?
Well, a life review is reliving your life from your own point of view, but also from the point of view of others. And this is really strange because, for example, let's say you hurt someone in the past. You hurt that person and you relive that from your point of view. Okay, when you hurt that, let's imagine that when you were a kid, you bullied someone, you hit someone. Okay, So you relive that, that just like you you feel exactly what you felt at that moment, but you will also experience it from the point of view of the kid who was bullied. And you will see the kid and all his fears, how all the pain, and how he saw you. You were a monster in his eyes. So I've met people who were really nasty. For example, I met this guy who went to jail for attempted murder. He shot a, a person with the intention of killing him, and he went to jail for 20 years. But he due to misbehavior, they extended his sentence, and he ended up having spending 29 years in jail. He went to jail when he was 19 years old. Okay, so he had a heart attack, and he died, clinically died. And he was taken to the hospital. They had to revive him. And when he came back, he talked about he came back transformed. He was no longer evil. He was a great person. He was such a, he came, he turned into such a fine man that he was given parole. In a year later, he was freed. Why? Because he went he had what is known as a hellish experience. So basically,
This is so
you
interesting. I heard about
yeah,
this, and
he
you have
went
to
to this
explain.
he went to this realm full of smoke. He said he didn't see the fire, but it was full of smoke. And he relived every bad thing he did since he was a kid from his own point of view and from the other person's point of view. So when he started, he was really bad. Imagine going to jail for 20 years and then they extend your sentence for misbehavior. So he was really bad. He was really nasty with others and arrogant and all that. So he started reliving every bad thing he had. And he said that he felt like he had a red piece of coal in his mouth that was burning him. And when he started reliving everything bad, he started becoming humbler and he started crying and he started feeling ashamed. He started feeling embarrassed and he was sorry. He started saying, I'm sorry," crying. This tough guy. He
Yeah.
was reliving everything, and he was simply crying and asking for forgiveness. "I'm sorry. How could I have been so mean?" And then when he came back,
Yeah.
he couldn't even swear. He was just a perfect guy. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He was just telling everyone else, all the other criminals, that they needed to behave, that they had. So he was freed in the end. And there are
Wow.
many people who have had this experience in which they feel what other people feel. And this brings a very profound transformation. So that is one of the main effects of those type
Yes.
of near-death experience. It does not happen in all cases. It happens in a percentage of cases, and these people come back with basically one lesson: don't do to others what you would not like others to do to you. That's the same thing
Simple.
that Jesus said. Okay,
Exactly. And
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 that is
every
basis.
ascended master.
Every ascended master has said that. So that's basically the root of all religions. Don't do to
Yes.
others what you would not like them to do to you. And it brings us back to my story of the one and the two. Don't do to others, number two, what you would not like, because we are one. We all are one. I am you, you are me. And I think that's why people get to experience what the other person felt, because in essence, we are all one. We simply have this illusion of being Janem or AJ. We have this illusion, but in the end, there's a single consciousness. People who study non-locality and quantum physics, they say that consciousness is fundamental. The mind does not create consciousness. Consciousness creates this material world. So that all is also aligned with that theory of the one that turned himself into two. Because if
Yes.
everything is mind, if everything is consciousness, how could God or the one create everything else? He had to use himself. That was all that existed, consciousness. So
Yes.
when he divided himself into two, he divided his consciousness into two, and a little bit, a spark of consciousness, he gave it amnesia, and we are that spark of divine consciousness. That's why they say that God is within us, and Jesus also said, the kingdom of heaven is within. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
People have to go within to reach God, to reach.
And not with, I mean, there is no without. I believe that the without is actually the illusion, right? Because it's the same concept.
Everything is
because
within.
We are. Exactly. And I don't know if you know this, but my family is actually Muslim. I don't belong to any religion anymore, but my family is Muslim. And when you look at the Quran, there's also a something in the Quran that says, like God is speaking from the I perspective, basically, like I am closer to you than like an artery that's inside of your throat or something like that. Sorry about if I said this in a wrong way, but basically, how can something be closer to you than something that is inside of your body, right? So my only explanation when I read that when I was like 16, I was like, wait, then what is closer than something that is in you? Well, it is you, right? So I think it's such a profound experience. This even when you talk about the life review and you basically experience a negative experience or maybe even a positive experience from the other person's perspective, well, that leaves you exactly to the conclusion that you just made, which is that we are all one. But most of us, we will not have that kind of profound experience. But even if somebody's watching who has never had an NDE like me, even I, for example, had so many experiences in my life of oneness that are different, than maybe less intense than what you're saying. But like, for example, telepathy, I almost experienced that almost every day in some form. And I don't know if people will believe this or not, but it happens to me all the time. I often know things before they happen. For example, I sometimes have dreams and then they become reality, but it's not all the time. But I have these experiences, for many years, and I had some profound spiritual experiences meditating as well. And I also left my body. But so I have also actually had that where I left my body and I saw my body. And for me, the lesson in that specific experience, which was an astral projection experience, was that I learned to, all of a sudden, I stepped out of all of my self-doubt. And I was like, wait, I'm every day scrutinizing this body, but this body is the perfect form that is made to live in this world. It's basically my house. It's my home. And I sit here and I criticize it for the way it looks, but it's absolutely perfect. So for me, and then other stuff happened in the astral realm, but that spiritual stuff, more esoteric stuff, was actually less interesting to me than the realization of absolute self-love towards my body. So that was a profound experience, for example, that I had that was not a near-death experience. But I think a lot of people can relate to some of these things. And I think,
yes,
wouldn't it be amazing if, when you talked about the jail, I was just thinking, like, if every inmate could have an NDE, then we would have, like, they would be fully healed and we could all, like, unite,
Right.
But
well, maybe in the future they'll do that.
Yeah, better than any therapy you can go through. I wanted to ask you, AJ, if there was anything you heard. All of this is life changing, right? The thing that happened to you, the NDE you experienced, the NDE you interviewed, of the people that have experienced NDEs. But was there anything specific that changed a paradigm? Absolutely, like something that you could have not believed before that was mind blowing. Like, can you give an
Well,
example of
there
this?
are many experiences that really changed me, because basically the life review is really transformative, because I understood that, first of all, there is a judgment after we die, but we do our own judgment. And it's not really a judgment. We realize all the mistakes, and since we can perceive them from the other point of view, the other person's point of view, we have to admit that we were not treating others as we would like them to treat us. So when I first interviewed, I interviewed a cop and a military who had very intensive life reviews. They were really mean as well. And after hearing them, uh, this was during the first months of me interviewing others, I realized, or I concluded, and they said, "You are not judged by your accomplishments, by what you did. I managed to become president or whatever. I did this, I did that." No, you are judged on how you treat others. That's it. There are no merits. I saved my country or whatever. No, you are judged by how you treat others. And I had always focused my life on accomplishments. I want to become this, I want to become that, I want to do this. And then I realized I have not treated people the way they should have. I have been arrogant. I have been mean. I have been violent. So I started feeling ashamed, and I started saying, look, if that's what really counts, I need to be more careful in how I treat others. And I think that is that was my main lesson. The other main lesson is that dead people do survive, and you will see your dead relatives and friends when you pass. They are alive. They're not dead. We think they're dead, but they think they're alive, and they're in that other dimension. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's life changing. The more I interview people, the more I realize that death is not the end. Death is actually going back to where you were before you were born, which
Yes.
which is our real self. There is another dimension where angels, spirit guides, and all our deceased loved ones live, and God is real, and we
Yeah.
do have a purpose in life. A lot of people, when they
Yeah.
have a near-death experience, they're asked, "Do you want to go back or do you want to stay?" And most people come back because they feel that they need to spread the word that death is not the end, that there is an afterlife. Some people are giving this mission. You have to go back, because they're not asked, "Do you want to go back?" No, they said, "You have to go back and tell people about this." And they come back and they tell people about this. So I think this
Yes.
is the fact that there are the new ways of reviving dead people, like CPR, defibrillators, and other medical advances. More people are coming back from the dead, and
True.
they are bringing these experiences. So these experiences have happened ever since the dawn of mankind. In prehistoric times, there were near-death experiencers, but now there are more people coming back. So, since a lot of them come back transformed, they are less religious and more spiritual. They can come back, they can still believe in Jesus, especially if they met Jesus, but they
Yes.
won't say. they won't argue about, is Jesus, is the Jesus of the Catholics better than the Jesus of the Christians, or is and they also say that Allah is the same as God, is the same as Brahman. God has no name. It's the same God in all
Yes.
religions. So
Yeah.
although they say I'm still Christian or I'm still Muslim, they understand that, for example, a Muslim will say, okay, Allah is in all religions. It's not only,
Yes.
that's the name we gave it. But,
Yeah.
and they start seeing that there are actually no boundaries between religions. And they also start understanding that we are all brothers and sisters, and there is a spiritual side of life, and they start being less materialistic, although they may pursue uh, fame and riches, whatever. But their main interest is to help others. You see?
That's so interesting because in the end, I mean, listen to a lot of NDEs where people say literally what you just said, that that they get the message, you have to spread the message that there is life after life, basically, yeah? Or life after death. And so I think what it does, it's obviously what you just said is the ultimate unification, like the unifying, like people come back more peaceful than they were before. People come back more unified. They feel more, I feel like from the experiences that I have read, they feel more connected, obviously, to everything and to God and to other
Yeah.
people, right? Other
Yeah.
races, other religions. It all doesn't matter in the end, is kind of what I got from a lot of those experiences. And I think, the message of that death is not the end, I think is another very powerful one, because then I think a lot of people
Yes.
live in fear, and a lot of
Right.
people, especially the mainstream, if you look at celebrities, everybody's trying not to age, everybody is trying not to die, to live longer, right? And even though I think a long life is obviously a beautiful thing, but why are we fighting death so much, right? And so I think this is another level of peace, that near-death experiences and sharing these experiences, like the work you do, AJ, is so important, because it connects people, even people, let's say people are atheists, or maybe they're agnostic, they don't believe in anything, right? But they can maybe still listen and find hope in this, or, anybody who listens, it might move something different within them. But I think that's such an important message, that death is not the end, and we don't need to be as afraid, maybe. And we,
Yes.
as you said, have to treat each other better, because, whoa, if you realize that other person is you, all of a sudden it's
Right.
harder to cause pain. So even to animals,
Right.
right? Like that's even something
Everything.
we're not even doing with each other and animals and other life forms, right? Even the weather
Right.
and the earth, how we treat the planet, right?
I
But
want
yeah,
to say
thank you so
also
much,
that
AJ.
I,
Yeah.
I'd like to mention that all these interviews, over 100 interviews, they are all, I uploaded them in a YouTube channel called the AJ Parr Spiritual Journalist NDE Podcast. They're available for free. I written several books. This one's Stairway to Heaven. This was my first book, 25 near-death experiences about encounters with God, Jesus, and paradise. This is basically about Christian NDEs. I plan to have another book about other religions, because I have also found that, like I said, I've met people who have seen Allah, others have seen Krishna, they've seen Buddha, Babaji. There are many deities that they have found. And I also did a long study about uh, children's NDEs. This is the girl who visited heaven and other children's near-death experiences. These are experiences by people who had a near-death experience at age 2 to 9. Only
Who?
2 to 9.
Excuse me.
So the only person I know that had a near-death experience when she was almost 3, she drowned. She left her body. and she merged with the light. And this experience was so intense that she never forgot it. And her name is
Wow.
Ingrid Honkala. You can see her videos in my channel. I interviewed her. These are all people who I have interviewed. So you can find both these books in Amazon, Stairway to Heaven and The Girl Who Visited Heaven. And I have a third book, which is How to Write Your NDE Story, because I help people publish books. I help them write the book. I do the layout. I publish it on Amazon. And many people who have contacted me need help writing the book. They don't know where to begin. So I wrote a book on that. It's also available on Amazon. And I just wanted
Amazing.
to mention that if someone watching this is
Of course.
interested, publishing their books, they can go to grapevine.books.net. And if you have any questions, you can contact me at ajparbooks.gmail@gmail.com.
Yes, you are very available. I feel like you are so open, and it's again. Thank you so much for the work you do. And by the way, everybody, guys who's watching this, everything that AJ just mentioned and more, I will put in the description below, and you can find his channel, find his website, find his books. Thank you so much. It was so lovely to have you on. This is again very special to me because my podcast is still new. I know you're doing this for so long. But for me, this is still the first step in my journey of like also doing more spiritual topics that I find the most interesting. You know, when you just said after that you found everything a bit boring, that's kind of how I feel every day in life. Like
Yeah.
I feel the most engaged when I have these types of conversations and deep human experiences as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be very spiritual, but these kinds of authentic conversations are like what drives me and what makes me really, really happy. So I'm excited and thank you so much, and we'll stay in contact. And
Yeah,
thank
you're
you to
welcome. Maybe
be
in
on
the
my
future
show. Thank you.
we can talk about children's NDEs or a specific topic, and I can come back whenever you want.
Yes,
Take
hopefully.
care.
I hope so. Thank you so much, AJ. I hope you have a
Thank you.
wonderful, wonderful day in Colombia. You are, and I will for me it's night here in Tokyo. And isn't that amazing that we were able to talk? Thank you so much. And thank you guys for listening to the Kotodama podcast. And if you liked this conversation, if this was interesting to you, please subscribe and like the video, share it with people that you think might benefit from this or might be interesting. And thank you so much, and see you soon. Bye.